Thank you for joining me and welcome. I thought it might be interesting today to talk about something that does come up quite a bit for both players and for guitar builders, and that is whether we should ever be touching these classic guitar designs, and specifically in my case, the Telecaster. I have an absolute passion for the Tele, and I'll come on and I'll talk about that and the reasons why in a second, but regular viewers of the channel will know that the Telecaster is my benchmark guitar. It's the one by which I measure all others, and in fact everything that I design and build is based on that recipe, which is to say 2 pickups, a single tone, a single volume, 3-way switch, and everything is made on level parallel plane, which means there's no headstock or neck break angles, and the strings are nice and saddles are nice and low to the body. For me, that is the way to build a comfy, practical and robust guitar. Let's go back in time just for a moment. So when Fender released the Telecaster in 1951, it became the world's first production solid body electric guitar. Consider this list for a moment because I find it amazing. The solid body, the construction method, the way that the neck attaches to the body, a metal bridge with metal saddles, single coil pickups with individual pole pieces, height adjustable pickups, the electronics and switching, and a 6-in-line headstock. All of those things were innovations for the Telecaster, and by any measure it was an absolute masterstroke in design. It changed the landscape of the guitar industry, and there hasn't been a step change in the evolution of the guitar like it ever since. But first and foremost, it was designed as a tool for working musicians, and an affordable one at that, from both a manufacturing and from a customer point of view, which means it does come with a few compromises, particularly from a look and feel point of view. I think what we do as guitarists more often than not is to fall in love with the sound and the tone of classic guitars, and I think it's exactly the same for amplifiers. So if you want to take what gives a guitar its voice and its tone and extract that and to wrap it up into something that looks and feels really special or new, or it's just another flavour of what the original could be, should you do that? This is my latest commission build, and we'll have a closer look at it in a moment, but for all intents and purposes it is just a Telecaster. It has a 25.5-inch scale length. The pickups are in exactly the same position in relation to the scale length that they are on a standard Telecaster, and the pickups themselves are Fender Custom Shop Twisted Tele set. So the voice of this guitar is all classic Tele. There are not many advantages to being the small guy in the guitar building world, but there are a couple of important ones. And when you're an independent builder, what you do have is the freedom to do all of the things the large manufacturer, that it's uneconomical for the large manufacturers to do, because either they can't be automated or they take too much time. What it does is that it gives you the freedom to get creative when it comes to the design and choosing the wood and the aesthetics of the guitar, and having the ability to spend the time on the necks to make these things feel the way that you know that they should feel, irrespective of how long it takes. I think those are the things above all else that I really love about building guitars. So let's take a closer look and I'll tell you a bit more about what it is that I mean. This is an original design semi-hollow all walnut guitar with an ebony fretboard, has a carbon reinforced neck, stainless steel frets, and all quality hardware and electronics from CTS, Goto, Schaller throughout. And I'll give you a bit of a close-up too, if I can. Now you're probably not going to be able to see the fretboard and the fretwork particularly well on that, so I might need to pop in another video, but I have talked previously about my guitars being all about the feel and all about the neck, and I've never really explained what I meant by that. Generally the thickness of the neck and the profile is something that is quite individual, and I tend to use a fairly slim taper neck with a perfect C profile. Unless I'm asked to do something different, that's what I'll do. There are a couple of things that I think are universally great things to do to make a guitar neck feel how it should feel for a custom guitar, and I found no shortcuts for them, but this is where I think it's absolutely time well spent. The first and quickest of which is the finish on the back of the neck, which I'll go from sanding the rough grits all the way up to 800, and then I'll sand in and oil at 12, 1500 and 2000 grit. The second and much more time consuming of the two, but the more important in my opinion is what you do with the fretboard. So the first thing that I do is to take all of the frets 0.5 millimeter back inside the edge of the fretboard. Then I will scrape, roll and polish the edges of the fretboards in between each of the frets up to 5000 grit before going back and then dressing each of the fret ends into semi-hemispherical ends that finish just on the inside edge of the binding, and then polish each of the frets. But the effect of that is that when you run your hand up and down the fretboard, you can barely feel that there are any frets there at all, even though the edge of the fretboard has been really fairly heavily rolled. And the overall feel is so comfy, and it just feels like the guitar has been played for years. That is what I think is the key to a really great feeling neck. And that's really what I'm trying to do with all of these guitars, is to take that familiar sound that we all know and love, but to elevate everything else into what it can be if you take away all of those manufacturing constraints, in as many different versions as I can think of. So is it okay to mess with these classic designs? I think if you love the original sound of the guitar enough that it inspires you to do something creative, then that just can't be a bad thing. But I will be really interested to know what people think about whether we should mess with classic guitars or not. But if you are interested in beautiful Telecasters, my friend Todd at Sweet Tea Guitars is currently making his ultimate Tele, and it is sensational. So do please head across to his channel. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video. I know he'll be interested to see what you think of his guitar. But as always for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll have a new episode of something very soon.